Welcome to another edition of the Sim Racing Garage. I'm Barry Rowland. In this episode, I'll be reviewing the latest actuators in the DK2 series from the guys at Sigma Integral, the DK2 Plus, sporting a larger motor and actuator housing than their DK2 actuator. Also, increasing the weight limit from 125 pounds or 56.7 kilos to 200 pounds or 90.7 kilos per actuator, while still maintaining a 7.9 inch per second travel speed. Time to put it through the SRG's review process and see how it does. So, let's get to it. Let's take a closer look at this DK2 Plus system from the guys at Sigma Integral. Right out of the box, this is a much beefier feeling and heavier feeling actuator. It's 375 millimeters long when it's in its collapsed position. We have 2 inches of travel, or 50 millimeters of travel in this. And you can see I have one of them pulled out over here. I'm going to show you that in a second. The housing is, just a beefier unit when you pull it out in hand. It's 5/8 inch thick all the way around. So obviously that's so it can take on more weight and be able to perform within the similar parameters that the DK2 system does. So out of the box, 16 pounds, 4.5 ounces, or 7.4 kilos, thereabouts. So definitely a beefy, heavy unit compared to the other one when I took that out of the box. By the way, you can go look at the other reviews I did on their DK2 system. Did 2 reviews on that in my Motion Systems playlist. So you can get the specs on that one there. I'm just not going to repeat them here. Now, the peak torque on this one is 4.9 Newton meters. So we got a beefier motor because the peak torque in the other ones was 4.4. Not that much more, really, when you think about it. But the RMS torque numbers is where the difference is, where the normal operating is going to be. And that's 1.5 Newton meter for this new motor, and it's 0.9 Newton meters for the DK2 regular system. So even though the peak is not as much, the RMS is almost, I guess it's about a third more or so, right? And it would take more power to deliver the capacity that they're claiming on these, which means a 4 set of these actuators will do 800 pounds. So that's the max you can reach with cockpit and driver and accessories before you're going above the optimal parameters as far as operating windows for these motors and this actuator system. It has a 5/8 inch ball screw unit in this. And of course, they have told me they've beefed up the nuts and things like that in here. Just the housing being, 5/8 of an inch thick, which comes out to, what would that be? That's 5/8. This is about 15.9, I think, or 15.9, I believe, almost 16 millimeters thick all the way around. So yeah, that's pretty beefy. The piston inside is 50 millimeters, just like in the regular DK2. So they have not changed this, but this is a big thick piece of steel anyway. So yeah, I would not worry about that at all. Now it rides inside of, they have a unique system. If you saw the other 2 reviews, you've seen this before. Let me turn this around here. They have a Teflon impregnated sleeve that's corrugated. And then they have this little piece in here that's riding on a flat on the cylinder itself. And inside of that, you can see there's a groove where this bolt has an end on it that's riding inside of this slot. And that's the anti-twist mechanism, because when this motor is turning this ball screw, the piston tends to turn with the ball screw. So that's why you have to have an anti-rotation system in this. The motor, let's go and put this one back, is definitely beefier. It's a clear path, just like on the DK2. Technic makes these things. Show you there. There's the numbers right there. And that unique heat sink that they put on their motors with those pins coming off the case definitely distinguishes it from any others. We have a little port up here under this plug, and that's a mini USB, and that's for updating firmware and stuff like that. Things you don't have to worry about when you buy one of these setups. What else can we talk about here? This is, let's see, per second, as fast as this thing can move, it goes 200 millimeters per second, 7.9 inches, which is plenty for a 2-inch travel actuator. A ton of speed for just 2 inches of travel, or 50 millimeters. So it should perform just right along as far as the DK2. the same weight applied to a DK2 and a DK2 Plus system, I'm thinking this is going to feel a little different. I might be wrong, but I'm thinking it's going to feel a little different than when I was in the DK2 system because we just have more power. So anytime you put more power, it does change the characteristics of the kind of feedback that you're getting or the motion cues that you're getting. And whether or not you're able to turn the difference is going to be, well, subjective, I think. But anyway, doesn't hurt to have a heavy duty unit, does it? All right. What else can we talk about here? Yeah, I think that's about it. You know, this is made in America, by the way. All this stuff, the housings and all those internal parts and the foot down here, all this is made in-house in California. So this is definitely something that is easy to locate because we're in the North America here. And the foot here is kind of a hybrid captive, if you will. It's not just a foot, a nylon piece that fits down in a cup like some of these actuators are that you buy. This has the design of a captive, but there's no bolt holes, so we can actually bolt this down to something. But it's kind of the same function because we have a little ball in here that's rotating within this aluminum cap here. So when the actuator is rolling or pitching, then this is free to move without binding up anywhere down there. Very important thing to do, obviously, when you have actuators moving a system. I guess that's about it for what these do. The peen finish on this, just like on the DK2 regular system, and that's kind of a turned or tossed, whatever you want to call it. So they put this into a peen tumbler, and it just tumbles the media around it, and that's the finish that you get off of it. Yeah, just a beefy unit. It's kind of heavy. What do you get with this? Well, we get our mounting brackets, which are very similar to the mounting brackets that you get with your regular DK2 system. We have these 4 close space bolt holes here, and they're countersunk, as you can see. And these are going to be used to attach to the actuator itself. We have 4 holes here, and we just take this, and now there is a directional indication here. You need to put this little cutout in here, over here on the housing. And the reason is it kind of comes out into a lip there in that machining process. You can see that there. You know, it comes up here. They cut it out from the roundish part of that radius, and then you can see it's a raised area there. So when we put this flat here, this is going to be a little bit higher before it drops off again. So that's why they could put that little cutout in there. And that's just going to line up like this. And they give you a bunch of flathead M8 bolts and some T-nuts. We got some spring ball T-nuts in here. It comes with your actuator system. It's kind of nice. And then once we have this mounted, of course, and we have our actuator sitting up here like this, then we're going to take it over to our rig and mount it to our profile like this, or whatever you're going to mount it to. Mount it to wood or just flat steel, whatever the case may be. And the spacing here, if you notice, there is 2 holes and then 2 slots. And of course, they're all countersunk, so those flat bolts can fit down in there. So this will cover a 20 millimeter centered profile all the way up to a 45 series. It's kind of nice. So depending on the profile you have, chances are you can bolt this to it. But I think most cockpits that are built, at least out of profile for motion, should, you know, at least be like a 40-80 at least on the side profiles where you'll be mounting this. And of course, this will mount nice and flush with that too. I'll be mounting this to a 160 profile, so it's kind of irrelevant for me. What else we get? We get some Loctite. This is medium Loctite, 242. And that's a little tube in there. You can see it very well. And that's so you can, once you figure out exactly where you're going to mount it, you can put some of the threads here and then go ahead and mount everything up, and it'll keep things from vibrating out if you want to do that. I don't do that to my systems because I've never had a problem, but yeah, I could see the utility and the kind of like a best practice things for doing this. But I check my bolts a lot too, so I'm not too worried about it. Now we also get a cord here, and this is RJ45. It is not shielded, doesn't have the metal shielding on there, but remember, this is all twisted pair, so it's kind of its own shielding, sort of. Anyway, it's better than straight wires. So you get one of these, and this is for interfacing between the controller box down here, we'll see in another minute here, and the actuator controller itself. So this goes to the controller box and it goes to the PC if you have an extra RJ45 port in your PC. Or if you don't have an extra RJ45, they include this little uni adapter. Plug in the RJ45 on that side and plug this into your PC and it'll convert. So either way you can do it. They give you a cord. In this case, this is a 110 North America type cord. And we get some cords, obviously, for connecting the actuators. We have a data cord, and these are fully shielded. We have a data cord, which is 8 pins. And, of course, that's going to go in the little here. See, we have an 8-pin interface there. And we also have, I believe it's a 4-pin. Yeah, got a 4-pin in there also. And that's the 4-pin that we'll be using for that. So shielded cables, you know, it's all well done. I got a whole bunch of them here in the bags. You'll need 2 for each actuator. So we have 4. That means we got 8 cables. What else comes with this? I think that's about it as far as what you get in the package. And the controller box over here that we'll take a look at next. This is the controller box for the DK2 Plus system. The exact same controller box that is used in the DK2 system, which would make sense because as far as the electronics and processing goes, nothing has changed. It's just really beefing up the DK2 system to the 800-pound weight limits of this system. And of course, you've seen this if you watch the other reviews I've done on DK2, and we have 2 ports each for each actuator. We have the data port down here, and we have the power ports up here. We have an RJ45. Remember, they give us that RJ45 cable for going from here to your PC. If you don't have RJ45 left open on the motherboard in your PC, you can use this dongle, which is an RJ45 to USB 3.0 adapter. Yeah, it's pretty simple. Not much to see here as far as the casement goes. We have a single fan back here. We have the DK controller up there, made in the USA, Sigma Integrale. And we have the plug over here. And remember, this is a switching power supply, so you can see on the bottom here. There we go. You can see you can use this in Europe or North America. So yeah, other than that's a box. We got some rubber feet. So yeah, not a whole lot to see here on the box. The dimensions, I believe this is around 14 inches. This is 14.5 inches, or we'll call it 370 millimeters. As far as the width, the depth goes at 9.25 inches, or about 233 millimeters. And height with the feet attached looks to be about 76 millimeters, 77, somewhere in there, or 3 inches. And it's a lightweight box. I like the way they got this box arranged. It's very simple. Of course, we'll be attaching our 8-pin data cable on the bottom parts, and we have the power cable that will go from the actuator to the front there. All shielded cables, like I said before. So yeah, a good kit out of the box. It certainly is confidence inspiring when you grab one of these actuators, no doubt. So yeah, what we'll do next is we'll talk about how I'm going to be mounting this to my cockpit. Let's take a look inside of this DK2 controller box. First off, we have some screws we have to take off the sides. There's only 4 on each side, on the sides here, on each corner. Now these screws here are holding the power supply in here. And you know that instinctively if you take casements apart a lot, that yeah, these are bigger bolts too, holding something on. So I just left those in. And if I didn't, it would still come out, but it would be sitting on the inside, then I have to reattach it. So no need for all that. What I'm going to do is go ahead and slide this off. And I've already unplugged. There's a couple of plugs in here that are coming from the power board on the top. And we have, not sure which this one is. It's another kind of power plug, but this is what they call an Amazon IPC5. Let's see the number there. And this is a Technic part that is the power supply for our actuator motors over here. And you can see it's very similar to the top. It has that little finger sticking up that act as a heat sink. And of course it has its logo sticking in here. couple of plugs for the main power to power the unit, and then the output power here. And we got a couple of plugs sitting off of this power board here. Go ahead and set this aside. Again, everything finished nicely done inside. Same thing in here. No misses as far as the coatings. Everywhere is nice and coated universally. So let's go around this and see what we have here. First, on the back, we have this power switch where our mains comes in. And we also have the 115 or 220 volt. This is a switching power supply, apparently. So you can switch it to which one you need. And we have a fuse inside of there. So that's a fused power switch. And this is an LCR electronics unit. This is a filtered power supply, which is kind of nice. Let's see if I can get you a shot of that where you can read it. So this is an anti-EMI kind of filtering circuits in here. So we're going to have some capacitors and things in here to try to filter out the noise in the AC and keep the EMI down as far as possible, considering how big that filter is. So of course we got the mains coming in here and it goes to the main board, and this is the main power board, and this is a proprietary Sigma Integral unit. You can see the little logo in there. And on top of that we have this little Meanwell 5-volt power conversion box. We've got the conversion diodes and the capacitors, smoothing capacitors and things all in one unit there. So that's going to provide the DC power that's going to power over here. This is our main controller board that's sitting on top of another red board, which is, again, a Sigma Integral proprietary unit. I'm not sure who's making this board, but yeah, this is the controller board itself. You can see it has a little slot in here for a micro SD memory, and that's probably where our firmware is loaded, I would imagine. We got a couple of USB interfaces on that board. If I can get this close without bumping the camera. Got a normal USB down here. Or do this in reverse. Oops, where am I going? Okay, there we go. And then we have a mini over here for USB input. Very clean looking layout. Of course, this is our power board on top, and you can see our power connectors there. They go to the servos themselves. We'll flip that around. And then we have the data on the bottom. So the data is on this board. This is on the bottom board. It's all one piece. Well, I'm going to show you that. So the circuitry for the data is involved on the bottom board down here. And that's coming off of, obviously, our controller board telling the drivers what to do. And our servo drivers, again, are integrated on the top of these motors. So this whole electronics package in here has all the circuitry required to run the motor, including the servo drive itself. I kind of like that. It's a very neat, clean solution. And that looks good on your cockpit, and you don't have another box sitting somewhere with a, 4 driver boxes sitting in it, although that works too. But yeah, I like the compact nature of this and the look of it, because it's a very clean, and I don't know how anybody could say that is not a clean looking actuator setup. And of course that makes it a very easy way to plug and play on this box itself, which I like, a plug and play system. Not many out there where you don't have to do some wiring and setting up drivers and things like that. What else we have in here of interest? Well, I guess that's about it. We do have a fan over here, cooling fan, and it's controlled by this guy over here. Put that down for a minute. And this is just a thermal switch. So then it's rated at 30 degrees centigrade, 250 volt, 5 amp. And that's just a thermal switch. So when it gets over 30 degrees centigrade inside the box, it will close, complete the circuit, and then our fan will come on. Again, a lot of room in this box. Well, once we set this power supply back in, there's not as much room, but yeah, very clean layout, as you can see. Like a clean layout. It's been well thought out, it looks like, just like the other controller board. Might be some minor differences here, but I don't have the old setup to look at to compare it to. So this will be, again, the main power coming in to the power supply itself that's going to sit down in this pocket area here. Once we have these cables connected and out of the way, it just sits right down in there. Anything else we want to see? I think that's it. Yeah, made in the USA. I like that we're getting another major manufacturer of actuator systems in America, or in North America for that matter, because yeah, that's a little bit closer to us than over in Asia or Europe, where other actuator systems are being made. But yeah, I can't find anything to complain about. I don't know about you guys. Again, very clean, professional looking setup, and I like it. Now I'll show you how I'm going to attach these mounting brackets to the actuators, and then we'll go over and mount everything up to the cockpit and see how that looks. Now there is an orientation for these actuators. In other words, you have two left side and two right sides. I'm going to mount mine. I guess you could mount them any way you wanted to, but I think I'm just going to mount mine with this flange where the connectors are towards the rear. So they'll be pointing to the rear. So I'll have one on the side pointing to the rear, and the same one behind it also pointing to the rear, kind of like in synchronization. Or if I have a cable problem for reach, I suppose I could always mount it the other way and go to the other side. So now I have the insignia over here, but then the pieces would be going towards the cockpit. So it depends on what you want to do as far as your mounting orientation. Now, these brackets, 12.5 millimeter thick piece of billet aluminum, very nicely machined, and it has that tumbled finish just like the housing does on our actuator. And on the back we have 4 closely spaced holes here for M8 bolts. These are flat head bolts. This is what we'll be using. They come with your kit, obviously. This is an 5 millimeter wrench size hex wrench. And simply set it down in there, and once we tighten it up, as you can see, it sits below the actual surface here, the plane, so that when we put this against the profile like this, we get a nice flat fit. So we got maximum surface area contacting on the piece of profile, the way it should be done. Now there is an orientation here. You want to make sure you get this little cutout here on the bottom part facing towards the foot, or pointing towards the foot, because on the housings themselves they have a little pronounced area or raised area here. You can see it there compared to this flat machine surface. You can see how that's kind of kicking up a little bit because it's following the curve of this actuator housing. So they put a little notch in there to clear that. So it's pretty simple. We'll just take our bolts, put this in again, make sure I have it in the right orientation. Go ahead and get these guys started, and then we'll just spin them on down. As you can see in the background, I've already done the other 3. Pretty simple stuff here. Doesn't take much time at all. The machining is very good as far as the threads cut into these housings. You see how easy this stuff is going down here. And I'll just tighten it up. Now I'm not going to do a final torque with this speed T-wrench because it bends too much. So we'll get a regular wrench and do a final torque on all of these before I actually mount it. Now they do include 4 sets of 4 of these spring ball roll-in T-nuts for 40 series. So this will fit in a 40 series profile. If you have something else, then obviously you'll need to, I'll just roll this thing in so I can get it to do like they say. There we go. Get over there. There we go. Like that. So it won't come out. So they give you enough of that to mount all of your actuators. Kind of nice. All they had to really do was give you the bolts, right? All right, so we're going to go ahead and torque these down, give them a final torque down, and then I'm going to go over to the cockpit and get these mounted and see how that goes. So I have the actuators mounted to a P1X cockpit. This is my extra P1X. And I pull this out and slap it back together when I'm doing testing for things that I can't test over here on my normal platform. These actuators are very large. It's one thing to have them on the bench and weighing them and measuring them, but yeah, when you see how big they are compared to this 160 profile that's on these side beams, of course, all of them in the middle too, it's just that this is just a massive actuator, especially for a 2-inch travel. So I could see where the extra weight capacity and power is being compensated for here. Now, bolting them in was no big deal. I used the nuts that were in the kit that we saw before in closer look. Put them on the bottom 2 channels because I wanted to sit high and have also at the same time have the tops of these actuators low as possible. So there's no interference. If I was going to put any other controllers, shifters, things like that, or even went to a flight setup, then that should be well out of the way. And it's high enough to where when I get in the seat, it'll be easy to sit in it and easy to get out of it. If I had it all the way down close to the ground, it's one thing to plop into the seat. It's another thing to crawl back out of it. If you guys have a low cockpit, you know what I'm talking about. So everything is put together here. I have the cables arranged so they're coming to the back of the actuator up front and the back over here. So I'm kind of looping them under and going to run them towards the controller box once we get that mounted and all set up. So we'll have to wait and see how that goes. But one thing you want to be sure of is that you get the front and rear actuators exactly the same length apart on both sides. You want all the measurements to be exactly the same. And I don't have to worry about the width because the cockpit itself determines what the width's going to be. But yeah, these things are big. I had the DK2s on here, and yeah, this just overshadows that as far as the massiveness of these actuators. So yeah, we're ready to go. All I have to do now is get it cabled up and, of course, finish building the cockpit so that I can run it. And when we come back, we'll see how the cables went in. Now I have the actuators all cabled up. I'm just running the cables underneath there. Got some basic cable management going on here. All that I'm going to need for actually testing, I believe. Very easy to do this. You know, the plugs just plug right into the actuators. Over on the controller box we have running now, you can see I've got my green light and some flashing communication there on the RJ45 port, or LAN port. We have all of the red indicators lit, which means everything's good with the actuators as far as the controller box is concerned. When you first start this up on the app, it does a self-leveling procedure, and right now it's mid-level, looks like to me. And we have green flashing lights on all 4 of our actuators. Go over and see this one. So when they're all green and flashing, you know you're good to go. So everything's ready. Now we just need to open the controller or tuning application and see what our options are in there. So here is the tuning app for the DK2 system, and it's very similar to what I've looked at before. They have made some additions to it and some improvements, I think. First thing you'll see when you open this up is a representation of your cockpit and the actuators attached to it. Now you can go 3-post or you can go 4-post. Currently, I'm in 4-post. If I go to 3-post, you can see it changes the configuration from, we got 2, 3, and 4. And I did a review of a 3-post setup, by the way, using the DK2, the non-plus system. I did that a while back, so you can go into the motion systems playlist on my channel if you're interested in looking at that. But I have 4-post, so I'm going to put it back on 4-post, and you can see we're back to that. Now, we want to get the measurements right between the length and the width. It's very important that you do this. The centers of the actuators are where you'll take your measurement from, as you can see from this line representation here. Mine is 36 inches. Now, you see a pop-up here that says you can go anywhere from 20 to 49 inches. We go down here to the width, and another pop-up, same thing, 20 to 49 inches. I'm 27.5 inches on the centers between 4 and 3. Once we've entered that information, we're pretty much good to go. What I'm going to do now is power on and see what we have here. Let's go ahead and do that. First, it kind of does a little leveling routine before it actually lifts into its running position, which it's doing now. So now this is the starting position halfway between our 2 inches of travel that's available on the DK2 and DK2 Plus that we're running here. So power's on, everything looks good. We've got a little log here that tells us what's going on, motion ready, turning on, and Sigma 1.3. Now 1.3 is the version I'm running. The absolute version is 1.3.106.5. So as of this video and review, that's what I'm running. Over on the other side, we have profiles and we have preferences. Preferences is to do with server settings. So if you have a Wi-Fi internet connection and you have a server running, you can still do things on this application if you want, but I'm usually directly wired, so I'm just going to be concentrating on this screen right here. All right, profile. You see I already have a profile up here that I've been messing around with. It's called iRace 488 Test 1. That was on Sebring. The games. This is the list of the games. It starts with AC and then ACC. We have Automobilista 2, Dirt Rally 2.0, F1 2021, of course, iRacing that we're running, Project Cars 2 and 3, Race Room Experience, or Race Room Racing Experience, R Factor 2, and X-Plane beta version. They're talking about doing Digital Combat Simulator also. So if you're also a flight sim enthusiast like me, this is something that might be important to you. All right. So I'm going to be doing iRacing, so I just select that one. Now this is where we're going to be making all of our adjustments, and each adjustment has a pop-up. Now if you go into the fields where we use the sliders back and forth here, the pop-ups are a little different. It says pretty obviously 0 is off, 1's a minimum, 10's a maximum as far as intensity. Now if you go up to where the title is, it says gas, brake, and pitch up here. Now it says surge is very responsive and highlights the driver's pedal inputs. So what they're really telling you here is they're using pitch because we don't really have a true surge element on this cockpit with a 4-actuator system, just like any other 4-actuator system. Then they're going to use pitch to give you that surge cue as far as your telemetry coming in. And it also has some more description on it. Surge also includes pitch naturally. So, yeah, they're just telling you that's what they're doing, pitch. And yeah, surge will have some pitch in it as far as in a real car suspension, because as we're in threshold braking, the front end of the car will dive down, and depending on how tight the suspension is or how much movement's there is how much dive you will get. All right. As you increase this, consider reducing the environment layer intensity. All right, since I was mentioned the environment layer intensity, let's go down there and look at that. Now, if we highlight that one, this captures the true pitch and roll of the game vehicle. What that means is a terrain pitch and a terrain roll. In other words, if I'm on a bank, like in the ring, and I'm going around the carousel, it's going to bank matching that angle that I have there. Or if I'm in an oval or something like that, and I've got like in Charlotte, and you got that big bank, the cockpit will rotate to match the angle or the degrees of angle on that actual turn, right? So this is what environment does. Now they're telling you if you start putting in a lot of surge or pitch to simulate surge, you might want to back off on your environment a bit because it might overdo it. And you can obviously do the same thing you can to every other feature here or element of your motion and dial it back or up. Depends on what you want. Something to keep in mind when you're messing with the pitch. Now, if we go to roll, it should probably tell us the same thing, and it does on the very bottom. As you increase this, consider reducing environment layer intensity. Sway is very responsive, highlights the driver steering input. So what that means is we really don't have a sway element DOF on the 4-actuator system, so we're going to use roll to simulate that. So we use roll for also to try to simulate the loading of the GeForce and the suspension on whichever side that the turn is that you're going through. So yeah, we're going to use roll to simulate sway, but we're also going to use roll for the environment. We're on angles also, and they also use roll for simulating some G-force in a turn. But, you know, basically it's loading you up against the side of the seat when you're in a turn. And of course, all of this is tunable. Heave, a very important element. And really when you have these kind of actuators or a 4-point or even a 3-point, heave really gives us some great road textures. The undulations of the roads, the different types of tarmac we're running on, any transitions from concrete to asphalt, things like that. And you can see I have smoothing on 10, which is probably something I was just playing with. I definitely did not have it that high. So, and if we hover over heave, it tells you the same thing. It captures a low frequency up and down movement up to 10 hertz, i.e. after a bump, suspension settling occurs at approximately 2 hertz. So that's just the up and downs, which is one of the most important parts of having an actuator system like this on a chassis instead of just having like a seat mover. You have heave, and that really gives you a lot more information on what's going on with the road that you're rolling over top of. Environment, we already covered that. That's for the roll and for the pitch angles, the real angle of the car, depending on if it's going up a hill or down a hill, or it's rolling on a bank somewhere. Road vibrations. Now this layer captures the high frequency up and downs. And that's, in other words, they've taken heave and they've added a little something to it. Rumble strips, if you like a lot of rumble, then yeah, you would increase the intensity of the road vibrations. If you notice, there's no smoothing slider here either. So that means we would go up to heave and induce the smoothing where we needed it for both road vibrations. That's what I am getting from this, and we'll test that once we're in the live session. All right, so engine vibrations. Now, the last review I did was on a 3-actuator system, the DK2 actuators, and it was in there, but it was not operable. Now we have it. So engine vibrations, now this is something that a lot of people are going to like. For me, it's kind of, it depends on the car I'm driving. If I'm driving a V8, then I like the vibrations of that. But when I'm in like a Ferrari 488 GT3, flat plane V8, high revving motor, those types of higher revving motors, it's just something that I don't think you really need. But, that's personal preference, obviously, and all this will be as far as the tuning of it. But, it's totally up to you. So, obviously, the more we move the slider up, the more intense that vibration from the motor is going to be. So they're just picking up the motor telemetry off the telemetry stream that's being fed into the system and using that to give you what you want as far as engine vibrations. We also have distribution. Front and rear, I had a 50-50 up here. I think it was in the Ferrari. But you can also do, and this is front rear distribution, as you can see there. So that's 60 front, 40 rear, or you can go 80 front, 20 rear if you got a front engine big V8 or something. So yeah, that's how we do that. And if you have something in the rear engine, then we can get the vibrations more intense on the rear actuators. So I had it at 50-50 Ferrari, I believe. I believe this is the setup I have for iRace, the first one I had when I was testing at Sebring. Right, so that's about it. Pretty simple, which I like. There's not a lot of filtering going on in here that you got to try to figure out. They do a pretty good job, I think, here with these pop-ups to give you a general idea of what you should expect when you're using the slider. And the smoothing is just smoothing. So if it's too harsh for you at the power you want, you just dial in whatever smoothing you want. And of course, all this is very experimental. You have to get in and do this to really understand what your settings would be as far as what you think you would like. And that's going to change from track to track and from car to car. So if you want to get a new profile, let's say I was in another track in the same car, I would just drop this down and I can do a new profile, or I can save the profile that I just modified and title it something else. You can see it popped up here for where it stores in your PC documents, Sigma simulation, and I already have one up there. These are Splite, or no, SQLite 3. That's the format for these folders. That's what they're calling them anyway. So yeah, just name it what you want in there. I can actually take this one, test 1, and just rename it like test 2, save it, and that'll save that configuration. And then if I want to recall it, same thing. I just go up to profiles, open, and that screen pops up and all your profiles will be in there, and you just open your profile. And this is the first time I've used the application where it had that feature. I wasn't able to save before, which was obviously a big gap in the app as far as functionality. And I'm very happy to see that they have addressed that. They finally got this in there. Like most other applications that for tuning direct drive wheels or for motion systems, you have a capability to save and recall a profile that you've tweaked and tuned, spent hours tweaking and tuning. And now you can recall this instead of just taking a screen capture. So yeah, now this app to me is in the mainstream now, as far as with other apps, as far as tuning motion systems. So I'm real happy to see that they've done that. So now I think we covered everything we need to in this application. What we'll do next is get into a live tuning session and see how the car responds to these sliders. All right, so we're in our live testing session now. And I have a basic setup going here. And what I'm going to do is just get out on the track and see what that feels like. Now, I don't have any engine vibrations on, so I am going to turn that back on now that I have some other stuff. And I have the sound off to the car, so you may hear some of the actual sound of what's going on when as far as when the actuators are moving with the RPM stuff engaged. But again, a high revving motor like this, it tends to, well, I guess it's cool at first, but after a while, I'm more interested in what's going on with the suspension than I am with the engine vibrations. And that's just personal. Of course, a lot of this is going to be very subjective. So we have to keep that in mind. Take everything with a grain of salt, as you should with all of these type of reviews, because you're not in here feeling what I'm feeling. I'm just trying to explain it or convey it to you as I go along. All right, so again, if it was a loping V8, maybe it'd feel better for me. But I'm just going to, now that I have it on there, it just, like I said, it takes away from the cues that I'm getting in the suspension itself. They're there, but it's just something, another layer that's on top of it. So I'm going to turn it off right now and just use the suspension itself. All right. First, we'll talk about the pitch, and that's when I'm hitting the brakes. And remember, they're using pitch to simulate surge. And what I'm going to do is just go ahead and hit the brakes, and you can see how much pitch I have in when I'm hitting the brakes. And when I came to a very fine stop there, you can see it jerked a little bit. So because it did that, I have enough pitch, but I'm going to put some smoothing in that and see if it does the same thing once I'm down here at the end of this straight and we're in the turn. So I'll go ahead and get some speed up here. Oop. Stop. Going into the turn, and I'm not getting any of that pop back from the pitch. It just comes back smoothly. At least that's what it feels like it's doing. When the motor's not running, as far as the sound, and you're used to hearing it, it's not an easy thing to drive and shift at the right time because you can't hear the tune of noise of the motor. I'm having to watch the RPM gauge. All right, so I'm liking the pitch there, and I have it at 3. I smoothed it out to 3 also. My mouse keeps, hang on a second. Keep my mouse away from there because it keeps flashing up. 3 and 3, so that's good enough pitch for me for the Ferrari. It might be just a little bit too much, but remember, I can go down here, and this is a good time to test this, to the environmental, and it's at 2 right now. I'm going to bring that down to 1 and see what happens as far as when I'm hitting the brakes. The rumble strips are good. Maybe I'd like them a little sharper. That'd be in the road vibrations, but we'll do that in a minute. Yeah, not quite as much pitch that time, I could tell. Let me go down here on this, get a little more speed in. So yeah, that really works. The environment slider, yeah, limits what it's doing as far as that pitch. And it should be doing it on the roll too. So you got to be mindful of that. If you like the roll where it's at, then you might want to take the pitch itself down instead of messing with the environment. All right, so I'm happy with my pitch. No worries there. Now we're going to go to turning roll. Now if I get some speed up here, and we're going to be bumping down the front straight here of Sebring. There's a lot of bumps in this track. It's a little bit much for me, but I did want to give an example of just what you can do with this. And it can roll even more than this. Just a little bit much for me. Or when I think this GT car should be doing. And of course, I don't know. I've never been in a GT car, right? So I just don't know if that's what I would really have in that car. So I'm going to take the turning roll down 1, and I'm also took the smoothing down 1 to see what that does, if anything. Okay, we're going around some turns here, so this is perfect for that. Yeah, this is more transitioning from this side to that side. It's definitely less, and it's not as intense, even though I took the smoothing down at the same time. I'm trying to match what I'm seeing on screen here with my dash. So if I was in the car, you know, I would see the car leaning, and it seems like it's leaning about the right amount to me to match with what the chassis itself is doing. And this actually gives you a better sense of immersion at the same time, because obviously you're seeing and feeling at the same time in your body, even though you can't look down and see what the cockpit's doing when you're at race pace and you're engaged in a race somewhere. So yeah, it's one of those things where I try to get it to match what the screen's doing, and it becomes more natural feeling to me. And again, the immersion gets a little better. And like I said, that's just the way I like to feel it. Got some good rumbles there. Yeah, I like the roll here. My pitch is good in the braking zone, it feels like. Let's go ahead and get some speed up here. Yeah. And it gives me the sense of the suspension as I'm going around that turn, loading up, and I'm being pushed against the seat. It gives you that sensation, but I'm not really being pushed up against the seat by GeForce. It's just the seat itself is pushing against me. In other words, it's rolling the opposite direction as you would think it should. But because we're in a simulator, that's the way we want it to do, because you can feel the compression on the seat, like if the GeForce was pushing me up against the seat as I'm going through this right turn. The rumbles are pretty good, actually. They're not too intense. So I'm happy with my turning roll there. Again, you can see I got some minimums on here. I'm not really running a lot. Now the heave, of course, this is a smooth section of Sebring, so I'm going to wait till I get down into turn 17 here, and we'll go through that, and I'll see what I think. That wasn't a very good turn, actually, but running off the road, it feels good. It's not too sharp, but I'm getting lots of detail here on the heave cone in here, so the road vibrations intensity is probably pretty good. So what I'm thinking about is if I go up on road intensity, that's going to improve the rumbles. So I'm going to have to get some rumble strips here to figure that out. Which is a little bit further down here. That's a little rumble strip there, but let's just go ahead and get down here where I can go to some flatter rumbles. There's a good one over here in this turn. Our little hairpin going down here. Well, it doesn't rumble very much. That's pretty good. Okay, I'm just feeling what's going on, so now I'm going to make an adjustment. Decent transition there across the concrete patch, but not quite as sharp as I'd like it. So I'm going to, and remember the description says rumble strips are 60 hertz. It doesn't say anything about transitions though. So you're going to have to play with some of this stuff to get what you want. I'm going to go ahead and pop this up to 4. I went up 2 steps and I left remember road vibrations, there's no smoothing. So if it's too much, I'd go back to heave and add smoothing there. All right, let's see what we got. I think, is this a rumble? Okay, that's definitely kicked up the rumble. Almost maybe too much. But I did go up 2 clicks. Good rumble coming off of this turn. Yeah, that feels pretty good. All right, so even though the rumble might feel good, is it detrimental somewhere else? It feels good there. Now this is some major rumbles through here, and these feel good. Almost a little bit too sharp though, so let me go through here. Yeah, you can hear I don't know if you can hear the actuator there. I think that's a bit too much. So what I'm going to do is leave it there, but bring up my smoothing a notch on heave, because the two are related, because, you know, it's up and down movement. All right, let's see what we got now. Okay, and going through turn 17 is going to also give me an indication of where I am as far as the bumps there. Get up to speed here. Actually, I'm kind of liking that. Get a lot of bumps through the straight here. Yeah, we're getting a lot of texture there. A lot going on in this turn too. Good rumble across there. I think I'm pretty close to what I like to feel here, as far as what I think I should be feeling and how it's relating to what I'm seeing on the screen at the same time. Okay. Yeah, it feels pretty good. Again, I don't have a lot of anything on here. Got some pitch, but the pitch feels good to me, and it's giving me that sensation of actually turning. Good rumble there, going through the dirt and then coming back on the curbing like I always do at speed. Transition, better transition. See what we do on this one. That was good. I don't want it too sharp, because if you get it too sharp, it starts feeling a little bit digital and artificial. And a good transition through there, coming back off that concrete patch. So we're getting up to speed now. Although I like my sound because it helps me. I don't have to look down at the tack and see what's going on down there. All right. Off that one. That's good. I'm kind of liking what I have here. And it didn't take me long to get there. I was kind of there already, though. Yeah, that felt convincing coming off that curbing and then bouncing back across it. Same thing with that. I don't know. It's still, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to take row vibrations back down to 3. I'm thinking it feels just a little bit too much to me in some places. Other places it feels good. Again, it's always a compromise as far as when you get to where you want to be. You're never going to get it perfect, I don't think. See, that feels better already. Yeah, it's not as artificial feeling. Coming down the straight, good. Yeah, plenty of texture there. Going around here. Turn 1. Over the rumbles, that felt good. Threshold braking, good pitch. Not too much roll coming around the corners because the roll, I feel like the roll is matching the dash shifting. If you can see that in the picture or in my monitors here, as my dash moves, that indicates suspension movement. I'm feeling like that's where it's setting now. That's enough. Any more, it's going to exaggerate it, over-exaggerate it. Of course, that might be what you want, so good bumps coming through the dirt and then coming back onto the track. Decent transition there. A little soft in the transitions. That one's better, actually. I guess it depends on where I'm hitting it, too. All right, so I'm going to go here and catch some curb there. Okay, that's good. Not too harsh. That feels pretty good, actually. Off that, I'm going to hit this guy. Yep. Good rumble. I'm not exactly where I was before, but then I was just playing around before. I wasn't really trying to focus. When I drop a wheel off of this curbing here, this rumble strip curb, and come back across it, like that one too, it's not too harsh. It feels pretty natural to me. And the rumble feels pretty good. I might prefer a little bit more intensity across that rumble strip. You gotta remember in iRacing, some of these rumble strips are more intense than others. And some don't even work. It's kind of weird the way it's done, but for the most part, it's a good experience. All right, back through turn 17. All right, so that's, yeah, getting a good texture coming across down the straight here, the start-finish line straight. My mouse is screwing things up. Coming through here on turn 1, good. Good rumble off of that strip. Pitch is good. It's not excessive, I don't think, based on what I'm seeing the front do on the car. All right. I'm thinking, what else can I do here? I'll tell you what, now that I've got it set up, I'm pretty happy with this. Yeah. Turning roll 1. I'm going to go up to 2 on that. Just as an experiment. I'll probably end up going back down, and I'm also going to increase the smoothing on that at the same time because I don't want to get a more radical feel than I already have. Good rumbles there still. Yep. Good transitions, dropping off the curves in the dirt and coming back over it. Good transition there across the concrete patch. I'm sure I'll get a good one here, and it is. Okay, coming around this corner at speed. Yeah, I think that's matching it a little bit better as far as the curve. I gotta watch what I'm doing. I'm still doing 80 miles an hour when I'm doing that. Good way to lose control of the car. All right. I'm thinking that's good. That little extra bit there and increasing the smoothing at the same time, I think, is what I wanted to do. Transition back over. Yeah, okay. Remember, I'll be doing something different if I was in a different car with stiffer suspension or a car that is not as stiff and looser. So in a different track also, I might be playing more with the environment if I was at the ring because there's a lot of uphills and downhills there, depending on what the telemetry was telling the system to do. You kind of got to wait for that too. Yeah, this is feeling pretty good. Noise levels. There is, it's just a smidge louder, I think, than like the D-Box systems. Of course, I haven't had one in a while here at the SRG, but it's not that loud as far as suspension goes. You know, PT actuators, the ProSimu's, things like that. I think it's pretty much in line with that. Even though we have the Plus system, which is a beefier as far as power goes and motor size goes, and the actuator housings themselves are much thicker than on the regular DK. This DK Plus, you can tell there's a little bit of a difference in the feel just because of that extra power and capacity it has. And it's hard to describe what that difference is. It just feels more authoritative, maybe, I'm thinking. But then it depends on how much you load on it, too. I'm loading this pretty much the same weight as I loaded on the DK2 system, the standard DK2, when I was testing that. Yeah, that was, you know, I got good roll coming off of that bump, but it wasn't too harsh when it hit. And that's another thing. The smoothing's doing a good job with that, I think. And I like the simplicity of these controls. You don't have to guess too much what's going on. Oh, okay. Now I'm... And, you know, it didn't shock me terribly when I did that either, when I hit it. All right. I tell you, I'm liking that configuration that I have right now. The turning roll going up to 2 made it feel a little better for me. Pitch, again, I could maybe go, I don't know. I kind of like what it is. Any more than that, I think it'd just be artificial feeling. I don't want to do that. The smoothing is all the way up on 3 on pitch because of the way this is working. It made it feel better to me. So I like this. I'm going to save this profile and just overwrite the one I have because I don't have my keyboard with me. So I'll just click on that and then I'll save it. There we go. And I got to replace it. You got to overwrite. Yeah. All right. So this will what I'll have probably for the Sebring and the 488 for a while because I like what I'm feeling here. And it didn't take me that long to come up to where I wanted to be, I think, which is, again, a testament to how this software, the tuning software is working, and not only how it's working, but also on what we have to work with as far as our tuning options. And it's not that much we have to do, which I think is a premium. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go back out and do this motor again. And because this Ferrari, I'm going to put the most of the intensity towards front rear. We'll go 40-60 rear and see if that, well, I'll tell you what, let's just go 30-70 rear. It is rear engine, right? So I'm just going to get me a little bit, a number 1. You know, I'll turn this up. Yeah, you can definitely tell the difference when you turn it up. But it also makes more noise. I don't know if that's conveying on the actual audio here or not, but it's definitely louder when you have the engine RPM running, which, as you might imagine, it is. But now, even without the sound on the car, I can tell from engine vibration pretty much where I need to be on actually shifting. Yeah, I'm going to get up to speed here. So the suspension's still working fine. But this is a high revving motor, and it's almost, to me, it's feeling like a buzz. I almost wish I had a way to smooth it down. Or maybe I just have it too weak. Let's go ahead and pump this baby up a little bit and see what happens. I mean, it's got all the way up to 100%. I'm just put it at 25. See how that works out. Yeah, that's... I'm not so sure about this on the Ferrari. I mean, it's subjective. You know, if it's something that you feel like you need, then that's great. But I can tell right away it's, as you might imagine, putting another element on top of everything we have already. It's muddying the waters a little bit, I guess is the best way to put it. I'm not feeling as precisely what's going on with the suspension as I was before, because I have that layer on top of it now with the buzz, or the engine RPM buzzing at me. I'm going to have to try this in a V8. I'd probably like it much better there. Oh, little catch there. Yeah. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but it's definitely making a different sound, or more sound. But this is smooth straight anyway. I'm not getting much suspension move. I want to see what it does when I downshift and go around 17 here. You know, the motion is still there like it was before. It's just that because the vibration is there on top of it, it's a little bit, to me personally, distracting on this car. But everybody's different. Depends on what, and if I was in a different car in dirt, then it might be completely different. So depends on which car you're in, I would imagine. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. I'll just have to use the engine sound. When I'm usually running, I have the engine sound up. I'll just have to use that as my engine indication as far as when I need to shift, so I don't have to keep looking at the RPM indicator. Yeah, right away I can obviously feel more detail of what's going on. And to me, that's more important than having the engine vibration, but it's a great feature. I think there's only one other system out there. I think it's D-Box that has that. Haptic feedback, they call it. So yeah, it's good to see other people can do the same thing. All right. I think I'm good here. I like what I'm feeling going around this track. Now what I'm going to do is, once I end the session, I'm just going to get in and do some hot laps and see what my times are based on what I usually get. So yeah, live tuning session, everything works like it should, like it describes, as far as in the little pop-ups. It was easy to interpret that, I think. Yeah, I don't think anybody would have a very hard time. And it's not going to take you too long either to find out a setting that's good for you as far as the car and the track that you're currently in. So yeah, I don't have anything except for the, you know, the engine vibrations just seemed a little canned to me, I guess is the best way to put it. Didn't feel realistic. But again, for another, if I get another car, it's probably going to change a little bit because the vibrations are going to be different. And you can move the vibration back and forth. You can play with that. But like I said, at the end of the day, even when I was running my D-Box system, I didn't have the engine vibrations on. It just wasn't something that I ran. So I just felt better off as far as getting more concise data from what's going on with the suspension and how the car is controlled when I'm using my steering wheel inputs and brake and pedal inputs. It's important for me to gather that data so that I know what the car is doing, allow me to control it properly and do consistent lap times. It just helps me. It might not help somebody else that way, and you might love the engine vibrations on the Ferrari 488. But again, very subjective stuff here. So yeah, that's our live tuning session. We're in iRacing at Sebring in the Ferrari 488 GT3 Legacy car. All right, so I ended up changing my roll to 3. If you saw the live tuning session at the very end, I changed it back to 3 from 2. And that's just one of those things that you're going to be doing if you have a system like this. You're going to be tweaking it back and forth a lot as you get more hours on the system, because you can tweak something and get a feel for it, and then that increases your speed or makes your consistency a little bit better in lap times. And that's what it's about for me. I'm trying to use the suspension or use these actuators to act like the suspension and give me information or data that I can use to control the car in a consistent manner, and this will give me consistent laps. That's typically what I'm after. Not a bunch of crazy motion and movement to go, wow, you know, like you're on a ride at the circus or something. It's not really what I want to do. Although, you know, from time to time you can crank it up and have a lot of fun. But yeah, the information that these systems give you is very good. The DK2 Plus being the 800-pound system for 4 actuators versus the regular DK2 at 500. You know, I think there's small differences in the feel here as far as way they deliver the power, but it's not that much. It's very vague. In fact, it might even be placebo because I know that these are bigger actuators and more powerful. But all the detail is there, but it's not digital. It feels analogish to me once I get it dialed to where I want it to. The smoothing sliders will really work well to get it there. as far as feeling analog instead of the digital, too much of a sharp bang on things. But again, this is all personal preference. It depends on what you really want to do on your motion system when you have it. But as you can imagine, once you have this thing dialed in and you feel like you're controlling the car, which is important to me, then you are going to be more consistent. And of course, the immersion is very, very good when you have 4 points of suspension moving your whole chassis. Now we've moved over to the rally car. This is a lot of fun, obviously, with a motion system going over the jumps like you see here. See the pitch, the way it pitched, and that was the environment slider. If you saw the tuning session, controls that. So as I was going up the ramp, it tilted back, and then of course as I rotated over the top of the jump as I was in the air, front end dropped down just like it should. And I wanted to show you guys that so you can see what's going on there. Not too many banks here, obviously, so I can't show you the banking too much as far as the environment. But again here, this is a lot of fun, as you might imagine, going over the jumps, and it's a good test for the system to see how it behaves, if there's any kind of problems with it, if the motors get too hot, things like that. And I tested it here, and of course I had to go over to the Lucas Oil trucks and test there, which is even worse as far as more brutal, if you will, off the jumps here than it is over in the rally. Doing the same thing here. You can see me when I'm going uphill or downhill. The pitch is changing as I'm going up and down. Again, not a lot of banking going on here, so you really can't see that. But yeah, this is a blast, as you might imagine. 2 inches of travel, of course, is more fun with more travel, but 2 inches is plenty to have a good time here, especially on this last big jump that you get on right here, and the way the truck rotates forward and it comes down, boom. Can you imagine? Yeah, this is a lot of fun driving the truck, and I always recommend anybody gets a motion system to do that. And of course, having the 800-pound actuator set versus the 500, kind of in the back of my mind gave me a little more confidence as far as really hitting these jumps hard and banging on this thing and turning it up a bit and see what it'll do. But then I ended up turning it back down because, you can turn these things way up so it's got all this crazy motion going on, but then you just feel like you're being tossed around like you're on a stormy sea or something, and you're really not getting any usable data. At least to me, I'm not. Of course, again, all this is very subjective. Take it with a grain of salt, because you might disagree and love it that way and want to drive that way all the time. But anyway, I ended up turning it back down so it didn't get too crazy on me. But then again, there's only 2 inches of travel here, so it's not going to do it so much. But yeah, it was soft on landings, a very analogish feel to the suspension here. It was easy to get it dialed into where I wanted it to with the sliders and the information on the sliders that you saw in the live tuning segment. And there is some noise here, and we're going to get quiet here and do a half a lap or something without sound so you can listen. All right, so we're back with sound now, and as you can see, or hear rather, the actuators have their own unique sound to them, these DK2 systems, because of the impregnated plastic or urethane, whatever it is they're using in there for that sleeve that they use instead of just greasing everything up. It makes a different noise when it's sliding up and down on those steel pistons than actuators that I have in the past. It has its own characteristic sound. It's not too loud, especially if you have like an engine running. It really doesn't make any difference that much to me as far as the noise. It's different, but it's not really much louder than anything else, I think. Maybe it's a little bit louder than, say, maybe a D-Box, but I haven't had a D-Box in a while, so I can't really quantify because I've forgotten. But yeah, it's not that bad. And again, on a video, obviously, I can adjust the volume up and down, so I have to try to make it neutral as I can. And so, yeah, again, it's not the best way to determine. The best way is to hear it yourself. But again, all actuators are going to make noise when they're moving, especially when they're getting beat up on like this in the truck. So that's why I usually run this on all actuator systems I review, let you guys make up your own mind on the kind of sound that you're hearing. Not so much the volume is that accurate, but the kind of sound. So, yeah, worked out pretty well. Now, engine vibrations, which is a new feature on this system. Now, on the Ferrari, I didn't like it. On the rally car, I didn't like it because those are high revving motors, and it's it almost was buzzy to me. Of course, that's subjective. But yeah, when I got into the truck, though, this Lucas oil truck, it's got a huge V8 in it, a big loping V8, and this is where I had it on because the V8 felt good to me. It's just the frequency obviously is lower because they don't rev as high, and it's just, yeah, it just felt pretty good. I enjoyed it. So I did use engine vibrations when I was using the truck, but did not when I was in the Ferrari and the rally car. All right, so I guess that's about it. I think I've shown you everything I could about this system. Doing a job very well. Didn't give any hiccups. Ran very solid. Never have any issues with it. So, yeah, I really don't have much to complain about. The DK2 system. Again, this is a system that you would get over the regular DK2 if, you're a heavier guy, you're going to put a lot of stuff on your cockpit, that kind of thing. And the 500-pound limit on the 4-actuator system for the regular DK2 might be a concern for you. And it's really not that much more than the DK2. Final thoughts on the DK2 Plus 4-actuator kit from the guys at Sigma Integrale. The DK2 Plus is a heavy-duty commercial-grade actuator assembly. When standing next to the regular DK2 actuator, you can see the differences quite easily. Although the DK2 Plus adds 75 pounds or 34 kilograms more capacity to each actuator, it doesn't cost very much in the speed department, with the DK2 moving at 8.4 inches or 213 millimeters per second, and the DK2 Plus moving at 7.9 inches or 200 millimeters a second, which is plenty for a 2-inch or 50 millimeter travel actuator, I think. Of course, the DK2 uses a more powerful motor to realize these numbers. It is a ClearPath motor, which incorporates a servo motor driver circuitry in the top of the motor's electronics package. ClearPath is a well-known brand in the servo motor industry. Interestingly enough, the DK2 Plus uses the same 50mm steel actuator piston that the DK2 uses, along with a 5/8-inch heavy-duty ball screw assembly. The DK2 series from Sigma Integrale is what I would consider a true plug-and-play system. Just mount the actuators, plug in the cables to the controller box, connect to your PC, load your tuning software, and you're up and running. I found the tuning software to be easy to use and was able to find a configuration that worked great for me. There are pop-up screens when hovering over the slider's title to guide you through each slider's functions. This newest version of the Sigma tuning app has a functioning engine vibration feature. Another new feature in the latest app is an easy-to-use save feature. This was the main feature I found lacking in previous reviews I made of the DK2 system. It's finally sorted now, which brings the tuning app's feature set in line with other major players in the motion system industry. Driving the DK2 Plus system was a very good experience for me. It felt like it had power and speed to spare, but delivered in a smooth analog way. The guys at Sigma Integrale have done a good job with the motion systems that I have tested to date. Their pricing for these kits and individual actuators seem to be in line with what the DK2 series systems can deliver. I'm Barry Rowland. Thanks again for watching the Sim Racing Garage channel. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And if you would like to help support what I do here at the SRG, visit my website at simracinggarage.com.